No worries.
Okay, we're live.
Okay. Welcome everyone to our school committee meeting, February 9th. We'll call this meeting to order. Let's see, we have Member Green, we have Member McFadden, Member Pasillo. Michael was on. Yep, he's on. Member Monroe and myself. We have Superintendent Aronakis, Director of Administration Bob Ross, Director of Technology Jeremy Taylor, Director of Curriculum Dr. Marie Ahern, and Attorney Michael Pollock. I think I got everybody. Okay. Let's see, open forum. So comments must be directed to the chairperson of the school committee, who may limit or terminate a discussion. No comment should address personnel, litigation, or negotiations as restricted by open meeting regulations. The school committee cannot take action or vote on topics introduced that are not reflected on the agenda. And if there's anyone on from the public, you can raise your hand or hit *9 if you're on the phone, if you'd like to address something not on the agenda. I don't see anybody. Okay. Okay, we will go to the consent agenda.
Okay, thanks. Under consent, we have the approval of minutes from the budget workshop on January 20th, and then the joint meeting with the two town councils and the school committee. That meeting was held on January 28th. We have one appointment. The appointment is for an FFA advisor, something that we've been working on for quite some time, and that will be a grant-funded position through the Perkins funds. And then we have our monthly bills.
Okay. Let's postpone the meeting, the budget workshop minutes, because we don't have Diane or Terry. And there were quite a few people not at that meeting. So we'll just postpone that for the next meeting.
I just spoke to Diane. I don't know why she's having a problem getting in.
Okay. All right, we'll postpone those minutes. That's fine. And I think we can keep in the joint meetings. Everybody was here. Okay, so if I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda less the budget workshop minutes.
So moved, Monroe.
Monroe moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Green seconds. Let's see, I'll take a roll call vote. So we have Member Green,
Aye.
Member McFadden,
Aye.
Member Pasillo,
Member Priscilla's audio is not connected.
okay. Member Monroe,
Aye.
okay, and I'm an aye. Motion carries. Can Michael hear us if his audio is not connected?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, all right. Let's see. Okay, we have correspondence. We have special education per pupil calculations from RIDE, and we have the all-day referendum information summary and discipline reports. Any questions or comments on any of that correspondence?
I have a couple of things to say about them, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
So the special education per pupil cost, you might recall that for the past many years, we've been at over $100,000 as our per pupil. And this is the first year that we have gone down pretty significantly. And it's really the way that the formula works. It's the last comment made at the bottom of the back page, which says that LEAs or districts with an FTE total that is less than 44. So that would be the total number of full-time equivalent students based on IEP minutes. And if it falls below 44, then the per pupil amount is capped at that 57,729. And if it falls under that cap, then the actual is used. So in our case, we have always fallen under the cap, but we've been working on tightening things up. And this is the first year, it's based on FY19 numbers, but this is the first year that it actually, we realized what we've been striving for. So this is really a testament to the work of our special education director and the teachers in that department. But our per pupil amount was basically cut in half as a result of that.
Wow. Good. Excellent.
And then the other thing about communication number 2 is the very last statement. There's a typo. This was sent to me by West Greenwich Town Hall.
Mhm.
And it says that the results of the all-day referendum vote are to be provided at the library on April 13th, but it's the night of the ADR, so that should say April 12th.
Right. Okay, noted. Very good. I don't see any hands up. Let's see. Nope. Okay. All right. And we've added member Donovan. Hi, Terry.
Hi, my apologies for being late. The roads are
worries.
awful.
Oh, yeah. And then is that last phone number on here, Jeremy? Do you know if that's Diane?
I don't know who that is. Whose
Okay.
phone number is ending in 666?
The caller ending in 666.
It's *6 to unmute.
Hi, this is Diane.
Oh,
on the
good.
phone.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
very good. Thanks, Diane.
Okay.
Michael, can I ask you a question? I postponed the budget workshop minutes. Now that I have everybody, can I go back and vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So if we can have, we're going to go back to the budget workshop minutes now that I have everybody, because who knows if we'll have everybody next time. So if we can have a motion to approve the budget workshop minutes from January 20th.
Donovan, so moved.
Okay, Donovan moved. Do we have a second?
Green, second.
Green second. Okay, we'll take our roll call vote. Member Donovan?
Donovan, I.
Donovan's aye. Member Green?
Aye.
Member Allen?
Aye.
I think you're abstaining. Diane, you weren't present. I think you want to abstain.
Now she's muted herself.
All right. We'll come back to her. Diane, you there?
Aye.
I think
Yep,
you're
aye.
you weren't present for that, so I think you want to abstain.
Oh, okay. I didn't know which one you were doing. so-
The budget workshop,
Okay,
yeah.
abstain.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't there.
Member McFadden?
Abstention.
Member Pasillo?
Aye.
I think you're abstaining too. I don't think you were present.
What date was it?
It was the budget workshop on January
The budget
20th.
workshop.
That's when.
Okay.
Member Monroe?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So the three people who abstained were abstaining because they weren't present. Okay, good. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for going back to that. Alrighty, we are on the 2020-21 budget projection.
Good evening. This budget projection shows some of the activity of the school committee and the review of the quarterly review of the fund balances and projections and the anticipated audit results. So this really starts to reflect, 6 months of activity, if you will, including, if you'll notice significantly, the changes in revenue are starting to show. So you can see Medicaid, miscellaneous income, and CTE. We have some positive numbers, some negative numbers that were almost a perfect offset. But saving the day was the CTE tuitions. Medicaid claims, anticipating a downward trend in those revenues. That's just billable hours and available services with the distance learning and the activities that's happening there. We just have to brace for a lower return due to the activity for the students that are serviced and access the Medicaid reimbursement. Miscellaneous income is a little bit reflective of some of the changes at the pre-K tuitions regarding the parents opting to keep their kids at home. And those could improve, but just felt it important to note those. The wages, the object code series 51 through 58, they're tracking as we would anticipate they would. And so we end up with a operations balance that is, just about zero, really non-material. The good news being, if you look at the unaudited general fund balance of 1.7 million, that's an increase over prior reporting and an increase over last year's general fund balance. So that's your cumulative effect. A lot of that has to do with the offsets that we received through some of the grant opportunities and the superintendent and his team working to mitigate, the expenses that we incurred due to COVID, but also it gave us a better return between the period of March and June of the fiscal year ending. Commitments reflect the activity of late with the capturing the 300,000 for the stage 3 fees and the purchase of the plow truck. And as we make commitments, as the school committee takes action, those commitment lines will increase. The available from surplus, that is just noted, that's the offset for, I see we got to make one little change there. That's overstated by 40,000. It should be, you can see up above on revenue, available from balance 320. Down here, it's an offset is the 362, that should be 320. So that actually puts us at about 1.1 million projected for the end of this year. All good news. All really good news.
Excellent. Member McFadden has a question.
Hi, Bob. So I remember the 1.7 million. I also remember the commitment last week of the $300,000. We didn't have a commitment prior to that for another $300,000 that you can recall. That there was none of that, right? You're saying this is it?
No, this is it. The 320 from the fund balance was at the conclusion of the approval of the 21 budget. That was the offset. That was the fund balance necessary to balance the budget at that time. So maybe you're recollecting that. I don't know.
I think I am, but I thought that would draw down on the 1.7, but I don't see it here though, right?
Well, we're taking it as, we're showing it on the second line from the bottom, available from surplus.
Uh-huh.
So, and it should be 320 instead of 362. I'll correct that. So we're taking it there.
Okay. And then the other 300,000, the commitment part is the engineering stuff, right? Phase
Correct.
3.
The stage 3, correct.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then the other thing, just as a reminder, from what's left from the unassigned fund balance, we have a policy that states we have to reserve at least 2%. So that's, 600 and change thousand. So it doesn't, we don't actually have $1.1 million available if we set aside the 2% by policy for emergency.
Right. Okay. Everybody else is good? All right. Thank you. Okay, we have the monthly status reports. Questions, comments on those?
Claudine, I have a question and I apologize, but I cannot find my hand emoji here. It's just hand. I've been
Okay.
looking for it the whole meeting. I don't know what happened to
It's
it.
on the bottom, if you kind of on the right hand, or if you click on participants on the bottom, and then it should come up on the
Oh, there it goes.
screen
Okay,
with all the names.
got it.
Okay.
I actually have a
Alright.
question for Jeremy, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Jeremy, I was just reviewing your status report, and I was wondering if you could give a little more info about the I hate to use the word breach, but the information that
So
was.
it wasn't a breach. It was
Okay.
it was a data incident,
Uh-huh.
and there was a Google form up on the website collecting responses from parents. I don't have the date in front of me, but in December, a change was accidentally made to make that open. I think they were trying to change who could access it to fill it out, and they actually changed who could
okay.
access it to look at the responses. And as soon as we found out about it, we fixed it right away.
Yeah.
And now, I've let everybody know they need to run everything past me before it goes on the website to make sure
Okay,
that
gotcha.
something like this doesn't happen again. And we're going to do some PD on PII and how to protect it.
Right, because just because it has medical information, it's a little bit concerning. But I guess that's the way of the world today, but just to protect it
Yeah.
at all costs. Okay, thank you.
And Cheryl, we did send out notification to the impacted families so that
Yeah, yeah, I did read that.
And we've got I got no calls or emails about concerns for that. So
It looks like it was minimal information, but just it is a little bit concerning.
yeah, it's
Thank
something
you.
we want to avoid. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's see, Member Monroe? You're mute, there you go.
Yeah, all right. James, for bullet point number 3 on your correspondence,
yes.
you mentioned that we have been told to expect 3 to 4 times the amount received in the previous stimulus. Can you just explain that situation? Like, where is that increase coming from, or why is that?
So we've actually gotten a few different stimulus grants based on things that were passed at the federal level and pushed through the Rhode Island Department of Ed out to districts. And they base that on, the amount of the original federal stimulus allocation. And then they do a formula in Rhode Island that's based on Title I. That's how they determine how much each individual district gets. The last stimulus package that was passed at the federal level, I know there's another one that they're arguing about right now, but the last one that was passed still has not made its way to local districts yet. But the stimulus amount that was passed at the federal level was significantly higher. And so when it gets pushed down to the Department of Ed, which then gets pushed out to the individual districts, they're going to use the same formula. But because the amount that they have to distribute out to the individual districts is higher, we're going to get more. And what we've been told is that we should expect 3 to 4 times the previous award amount, which was roughly $150,000. So, there are going to be some stipulations about how that money can be used, and there's a committee, the task force that they've put together that I indicated that I'm co-chairing with the commissioner and the deputy commissioner. So within 30 days, that guidance will come out, and then we'll be talking internally about how those funds could be spent. One of the things that I've mentioned already, knowing that this was coming, is that the psychologist that we added to the district under one of the stimulus grants that we got this year, we want to continue her into next year. I know that's an allowable expense. But how are we going to also address learning loss, the academic needs that our kids have who have not been in person every day? We still have a number of families that are doing full distance learning. So there are definitely kids that are struggling, and the money is to be used to address those needs, the academic, social, emotional needs. So that's what we've been told to expect. I don't have a number yet, but I know it's going to be more significant than what we've received already.
That's great. Also on that same correspondence, the second from the bottom, you shared the outcome of the Metcalf testing. I know that nurse shared that the kindergarten and first grade have also been tested.
Yeah, so Wawaloom on-site Binax testing will begin this week at Wawaloom. Yeah, so Metcalf actually begins, the Metcalf testing will begin the week after vacation. We haven't done any of the on-site testing at Metcalf. We've done kindergarten, grade 1, which is all of Wawaloom, all of the staff, certified, non-certified staff. We've done the staff at Lynham and the staff at central office. We've done over 100 rapid Binax tests at those locations, 0 positive cases. And then we've also started to test our athletes. The athletic director we had trained, so he's conducting the Binax testing for athletes on a weekly basis. 0 positive cases so far there as well. So we've done a lot of tests and we have no positives. The only positives that we received were on that first event at the junior senior high school, and it was 1 child and 1 staff member. So the numbers are really, really, really good, really positive.
Great. All right, that's it.
You're good? Okay. Let's see, Member Donovan?
Thank you. On Jeremy Taylor's report. Jeremy, I shared Member Green's concerns about that last bullet on the first page, and I appreciate you reporting it in full in this document. On the paragraph before that, the one relative to Adobe, can you just tell me what the acronyms mean, DPA and TEC?
Yes, DPA is Data Protection Agreement.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what TEC stands for, but they're the company that the Rhode Island Student Data Privacy Alliance uses. They're a law firm in Massachusetts, and they're the ones who negotiate the agreements for us.
So in the third sentence, it said she has significant concerns. So is she?
She's a
He's
lawyer.
attorney?
She's Tech's attorney, yes.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure the DPA was something, that's what I thought it was, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't related to the Data Protection Alliance that's referenced in the paragraph before that one. So it's a different DPA.
No, it's the same alliance.
It is?
Yes.
But agreement.
Yeah, it's a different agreement.
Okay. Thank you. I'm all set.
Okay. Let's see. Member McFadden, your hand is up, but it didn't go away from the last time. Do you have a question?
No, that was for the last time.
Okay, thanks. Member Allen, do you have a question? I don't know if your hand was up from the last time. Diane, your hand is up. Do you have a question?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Well, one of them was answered for Jeremy, but I also had one for Jim in the 4th bullet point. Are you going to address the new ideas about West Greenwich?
Yes.
Later on, or
Yes.
should we ask something now? I wasn't sure when to ask.
Yeah, so when we do the FY22 budget presentation, I'll go over all of that information with everybody.
Okay.
Okay, I think everybody's all set. Okay. we will move on to new business. We have review and authorize acceptance of proposals for the Westerly Community Credit Union Teacher Grant. I believe we have one in our packet.
Yeah, this one's pretty cool. It's prosthetic hand printing, 3D prosthetic hand printing. And this was submitted by the junior senior high school library media teacher.
Any questions, comments? Member Donovan?
Thank you. So I just wanted to know how many students are anticipated to be able to participate in this, and in what way, like the project-based learning curriculum. Can you describe to me more specifically how many will be able to participate, and will it be something that they sign up for? Is it through the library?
Yeah, so she has run a 3D printing club out of the library after school hours. That's what she's looking to continue and provide some different opportunities for them. And it's junior and senior high school kids. I'm not exactly sure of the number, but I know it's an after school activity.
Is this a club that would be impacted by the budget as proposed?
No.
Would the
So the
fund-
club itself, the activity that she runs is already happening. This is just adding another activity for them to work on.
Fully funded by this program with the credit union?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The
Oh,
club
would
itself is
this-
already happening and funded. The credit union grant is for the materials to do the 3D hand printing. We already have a 3D printer. on
Okay,
as well. That we
okay,
Yeah, she's just buying the kits, but the printer itself, the 3D printer, is already on site.
okay.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So if we can have a motion to authorize acceptance of the proposal for the Westerly Community Credit Union Teacher Grant 3D prosthetic hand printing.
So moved.
Green moves. Do we have a second?
Donovan second.
Donovan seconds. Okay. Roll call vote. Member
Second.
Donovan? Yep, we have I think Green seconded. Thanks, Diane.
Oh,
Member Donovan?
Donovan, aye.
Member Green?
Aye.
Member Allen?
aye.
Member McFadden?
Aye.
Member Priscilla?
Aye.
Member Monroe?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Good, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then we have statewide bond pay-as-you-go memorandum of agreement / committee signatures.
So I hope committee members had an opportunity to really look at this document. It's action-packed with a lot of information. Significantly, it's contingent upon our bond approval. But this is the MOA that shows that would become, it's effective December 15th, but this will be the one that we would start to operate to do all the capital projects. It would ensure that we're in the queue and have the approval for these projects and the reimbursement post June 30th of 2021, which is when our current MOA ends. So we really need to have this in hand. I believe it's like page 4, if you just, or the backside of page 2, where it shows the base rate at 61% and the maximum rate at 78.5%. I mean, 78 78 and a half cents on every dollar we spend. That's a heck of a reimbursement. That is just amazing. So this action was taken by the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education on December 15th. So they approved the 17.8 million bond projects as recommended by the School Building Authority. And then the second part of this document that's inclusive is the PAYGO offering. So the approved project cost PAYGO amount is 3.7 million in, that's a calculation, that's a percent of a percent. And then the PAYGO reimbursement is a percent of the percent. So to make a long story short, without all the calculations, you know, we have available to us upon fully executing this MOA in the approval of the bond, access to immediate reimbursement for eligible expenses up to an amount of 2.3 million. So what that would mean to us in practicality is the bond gets approved. We've incurred $300,000 to $500,000 of engineering and architectural fees for stage 3. I have invoices I can submit on behalf of the district and begin to receive the reimbursements for that, which then you know, hits our capital reserve account or fund, and we're able to continue to, you know, helps us with our cash flow until we actually get to the issuance of the bonds. So it's really exciting, but it really puts, you know, everybody on this call, you know, at the risk of sounding, just, I don't know what the proper word is, but we have to make sure that this bond happens, because we're at the point where people are starting to behave like it's happened.
Noted. Good. Anybody have any questions or comments? Member McFadden?
Bob, I can recall the breakdown of the town's yearly obligation to pay off the bonds from our previous bond amounts. I don't have a recollection of the breakdown of the town obligations upon passage for the 17-8 bond. Does that sound right?
We did present it at the prior to submitting the stage 2, and the I'm just pulling it up now. Hold on.
Then can you forward that to me? And if you want to send it out to the whole committee, that's fine, but I'm interested in seeing it because I have no recollection of the 17. And that should include like all the, like interest, the stuff that we like to see, which is, the interest, when does it start, when do the payments start, when do they end, et cetera, right?
Correct.
Is that something you can send out again to the committee, or at least
I
me?
mean, it is going to be. I can send that out.
All right.
It's just kind of freewheeling right now.
Yeah. And so we're not showing up on the March state bond, and are we then targeting the April all-day referendum for the bond, or is it now something different, or you don't know?
I don't know. There's incomplete information right now regarding right now, it looks like the Senate is holding on 2/4/2021. So last week, the committee recommended measure be held for further study. The progress on 2/12, first chamber scheduled for hearing study. So on Friday, I believe this is on the Senate side. I just got this information from RIASBO. It looks like they're trying to get it to be immediately considered, which would be enacted and effective on the same day. And hopefully that will happen on Friday. If it happens on Friday, then we can make the April 12th ADR and put that election on the same day. So the voters only have to go once to the polls.
And that's our target.
That's our target. If it doesn't happen, we may have to find another way, to legally skin that cat,
Sure. So did you say you're going to send that out, the breakdown monthly payment by town business and the interest rates and all that business? Did you say you're going to send that out now or tomorrow or the next day? Just so I don't call you saying I didn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I can, whatever the will of the committee is, I mean, I can send it out. It's public information, and it is absolutely mirrors what the PAYGO shows us. I'm just trying to find it, so part of my inattention a little bit. So it reflects exactly what you have in your packet. It just has it will have the schedule, which I'm trying to call up. I got the evil spinning disc on my computer right now.
So this would be the breakdown by year from the bonding company, right?
From PFM Financial, yeah, it just came up.
Yeah. Those guys, yep.
So it looks like the interest payments are the first 3 years, 200,000, 400,000, 400,000 respectively. And then as we get into, it hovers right around for 2024 out to 2047. It hovers right around the 400,000 mark. So it's a 25-year bond that is, the debt services, the way they structure it. So it's the same debt service every year. It's not a declining. You start high and then decline, like most of our debt service has been. With this amount, this is in the sweet spot where the best modeling showed that it should be roughly, in that $400,000 range.
So that 400,000 is split between the two towns, right?
Correct.
Or student, what's the word? Student ratio applied, right? I got it. All right. Well, if you could still send that out, that would be nice.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Bob, you'll have this in admin so the school committee members can come in and sign when they can. When do you need to sign by?
Yeah.
Or is it after the?
I have an inbox from RIDE asking any movement on this, so I just wanted to make sure that we're on board to sign. And
Okay, so if everybody can make
it could
gold.
be here and available for everybody to sign, but that's up to the committee. I don't know if
Yeah, why don't
people-
you just have it at the front desk and then everybody this week, if you can try to get into admin to sign it. Member Green, you have a question?
I was just curious how late the admin building is open.
I think 4.
Okay.
Am I mistaken? It could vary depending on.
Yeah, we can
Circumstances of
make
COVID.
accommodations.
Okay.
I would suggest texting or emailing Mr. Ross and letting him know when you're coming.
Yeah, that's great.
How's that, Bob?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll make it happen.
Okay, so if everybody's put in your calendar, try to get that done this week, that'll be one less thing that we have to accomplish. Okay, good. All right, we will head to unfinished business. We have the 2021-22 budget discussion.
Okay, so I'm going to show a bunch of different things and kind of explain some of the documents that I included in the packet. I won't go through things that I've already explained before, but I want to highlight where some of the changes are and some of the updates. Okay, if that's all right with everybody, and then I can take questions.
Yep.
So the first thing that, hold on one second, let me just. Why does this look like it's getting smaller, Jeremy, instead of
You're
bigger?
changing the scale of the page size and not the view zoom.
All right, so
I really don't. Oh, up higher. The top bar is 100%. Yep, your mouse was just by it, by the purple question mark.
Oh, you know why? Because it was hidden by
By the bar.
Yeah, by the bar. That's why I couldn't see it. Oh, thank you.
There you go.
All right. So this is something that you've seen before. I just have updated location, looking at what the original budget had in terms of an increase or a decrease, and then what reductions we've made as we've gone through the analysis and where we stand right now. So for example, at the senior high school, the original budget called for a $71,515 increase. Through the analysis, we've been able to reduce that by about $30,000. The new change is $41,649, and then I provided a basis for the increase. So we talked about the ELA curriculum based on the law that we need to be in compliance with, and then the AP testing fees, and that has to do with a decision that was made, a hearing decision that was made last year. So I tried to provide for you in the case where we have an increase, where the bulk of that increase comes from. But you'll see that there are some very significant changes that we've made as we've gone through this process. For example, originally Metcalf had a $40,000 increase. They are now $6,375 below what they were for the current year. So that's just really a quick update. And I can take.
I'd like to comment on that, Claudine.
Yep, go ahead, Member McFadden.
So, Jim, I don't know what the cut was at Metcalf, but let me express it, and then you might want to answer what the cut was. I'm going to express a little concern about Metcalf because we have RICAS testing scores that were below par, as you know, from 2 years ago and 3 years ago. So I'm a little itchy scratchy about touching Metcalf. So can you explain what those cuts were at the Metcalf level?
Yeah, so these, the departmental cuts that we're looking at here are not staffing. These are things like, and I'll give you an example. One of the items that was cut was a set of cafeteria tables, budget twice. There were some technology needs that were budgeted for. We are keeping the technology request, but we're paying for it through a 3-year lease agreement, which reduced the costs overall. That's typically what we do with technology needs. So some of it was, were items that were in there twice. Some of it was a reduction based on a more cost-effective way to pay for it. And then there were some other reductions of things that were considered wants and not needs. So these are not staffing or programmatic changes. These are changes to, office supplies and classroom-based supplies and technology requests and furniture and those kinds of things.
Paul, are you good?
Paul, you're still muted.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm good for now.
Okay.
For now. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Okay. So we're going to slide over to here. This is just for demonstration purposes. And again, I'll give a little bit more detail in some of the other spreadsheets, but just quickly, what we have in this cell is 34,616,726, which was the original request. That was what was presented right after the new year, before any analysis was done. Where we are currently is we've gone from the 34,616,726, we're at 33,808,284. So we have made just over $800,000 worth of reductions based on the analysis that has happened at the very granular level with each department. So I just want to, and again, let me just show you the bottom. So originally Exeter was at 10.79%, West Greenwich at 2.61%, and that's because of the significant population shift, which we've talked about. And so that was the original. Now, when I plug in this new amount where we currently stand, we'll see what happens. 33,808,284. So we've gone from 10.79% down to 7.64%, and we start seeing West Greenwich fall below 0, meaning that their contribution is going to be less because the population shift is in their favor. So that's just based on that reduction. You'll also notice that this amount, 33,808,284, is a 2.03% increase over the budget that we're currently operating on. It is slightly less than the budget that was requested for last year. What we requested last year and what was approved in May was 33,861,958, and we're at 33,808,284. So it's about $53,000 less than what was requested and originally approved by the school committee last year. And it is a 1.26% increase over FY20. FY20, we were at 33,387,864, which we know that was a higher budget than what we're operating under this year. So just as a comparison, we have those numbers. Now, The other thing that we will talk about is the OPEB reserve conversation. So I just want to demonstrate what that does here, but we will talk about it as part of the budget and fund balance presentations. If this is a direction that we decide to go, then that would be an added revenue of 164,948. And we know that adding revenue has the same impact as reducing expenses. So when I add that revenue in, we can see what's happened to the town of Exeter and the town of West Greenwich, 6.99% and then minus 0.90%. And then finally, we knew at the time that I produced these documents that there was one additional CTE tuition. I know by the time we present at the next meeting, there will be some additional confirmed tuitions that I'll be able to add in as an additional revenue. But this is what was confirmed at the time that these were produced. So I'm just going to put that number in, 202,903. So there will be some probably some slight changes based on reductions, additional reductions that we're working on and additional revenues. But in terms of the work that we've done so far, this is what the result is. Exeter would be at 6.94% increase, West Greenwich at negative 0.95%. And we know based on the previous discussions that just over 5% of the increase has to do with the population shift alone. And then the additional increase is because there is obviously an increase in the request for operating funds. So that's, again, just a demonstration. I have more to show in a minute because there are some other ideas that we have. Okay, but that's a good update for everybody. Okay.
Paul, go ahead. Jim,
What's that abbreviation, OPEB, OPEB? What's that stand for?
Other post-employment benefits.
All right, thanks.
Okay. All right, so this one is a pretty busy spreadsheet, but it contains really all the same information that I just showed you. It kind of gives you the progress that we've made along the way, including healthcare, which is coming in at a 0% increase, the psychologist that I talked about moving to the grant. All of this information kind of resulted in where we landed at 33,808,284. And then I had presented previously that part of the rationale for the population shift that we're experiencing, I've related directly to COVID, to the pandemic. And that was the preschool and kindergarten enrollment numbers that I went through last time. We know that we're seeing a decrease in enrollment in these early grades. These are non-compulsory grades. And because of concerns that parents had with the pandemic, with COVID, chose not to send their kids to school. We saw a significant reduction. And based on the previous analysis that I had done, just based on the preschool and kindergarten enrollment numbers and what we would project under normal circumstances. So if parents just sent their kids to school like they traditionally have over the past many years, based on the percentages, we expected that the Exeter share would have been 47.4%, and the West Greenwich share would have been 52.6%. In actuality, you can see the difference, right? Exeter came in at 48.1% and West Greenwich at 51.9%. So it did shift the numbers by a good amount, 0.7% in both directions. And so I have presented to the school committee before that one idea was looking at what we would have projected based on preschool and kindergarten enrollments, that if we had applied that percentage, it would have brought Exeter down by just shy of $200,000, and West Greenwich contribution would have gone up by the same amount. What that would have done is brought the numbers to 5.38% for Exeter. Remember, we were at like roughly 7, but it would have brought it down another 1.7% or so, and West Greenwich would have been at 0.38%. So the thinking was, we have the pandemic, we have a lot of unintended impacts of the pandemic. I talked about the funding formula, the free and reduced prices lunches, the enrollment numbers based on early childhood, based on homeschool requests. We know the federal government is making, is providing access to stimulus funds for us. The state is working really hard to push forward legislation that would hold us harmless for the changes in enrollment. So we're getting relief at the federal level, relief at the state level. And I tried really hard to see if there was something that we could do at the local level to address what we're seeing as an impact on our district. And we are special because we're a regional district and we have rules around proportional share. So I know, based on the analysis, that the pandemic is impacting the population shift in a way that negatively impacts one town and positively impacts the other town. I also know, based on the analysis, that when things go back to normal and families are sending their children in for early childhood, that we're going to see the swing go in the completely opposite direction. So Exeter will see an increase in their contribution this year and then a decrease the following year. West Greenwich sees a decrease this year and then they'll see an increase the following year. So the thinking was, how do we try to level that out in a way that we can reduce the impact to Exeter, which is the community that's being impacted in a very negative way? My original thinking was, can we kind of balance it out over 2 years where we use the predicted enrollment percentages and make an adjustment based on the predicted. Exeter would have gone down by 191, West Greenwich would have gone up by 191. So if I made those adjustments in this year and said, listen, Exeter just pay $191,000 less, West Greenwich pay $191,000 more, and then the following year, when the population shift goes in the completely opposite direction, just reverse these numbers so that the net is 0 for both towns. We're not helping or hurting either town, but we're kind of easing the burden in a way that, especially for me, addresses the major impact on Exeter because it is significant, but it also kind of balances out the impact. We know that proposal was not widely accepted. So I went back to the drawing board and I want to show you this new document, again, just for discussion, because I won't pursue anything unless I have the blessing of the committee. So again, all the same information. Okay. So this is the expected, right? These are the 47.4 and the 52.6% is the expected proportional share based on the population adjustment that I made because of preschool and kindergarten. It's the same figures that you saw in the previous spreadsheets. If that were the case, we know Exeter would have gone down to 5.38% and West Greenwich at 0.38%. And then I projected out, just to show the impact for the following year, I projected out what might happen in 2022-23. So I keep talking about make an adjustment this year, reverse the adjustment the following year so that it balances out over 2 years. No town is getting more or less, but it's really just a way to kind of ease the burden really to Exeter. And we're having this discussion because we know that the burden is at least partially impacted by the pandemic. But let's project out what might happen in 22, 23. So as an example, I took the budget where we currently are, that 33,808, 284. I'm not saying that's where we'll land, but that's where we currently are. And I just added a 2% increase. I just want to model a 2% increase. I'm not saying that's what it will be, but I'm modeling an increase. That means that the budget would be at this amount, 34,484, 450. I assumed level funding of all of the revenues as we've included them in the draft budgets that I've presented. And I put in the new calculation for the bond payment. So again, we're 1 more year out, so the bond payment goes down a little bit. And so we can see that, let me just put this number here, 191,160. What that would do is it would swing West Greenwich to almost the cap, and it would Exeter would see a decrease. Even with a 2% increase in the budget, Exeter would see a decrease next year. So the thinking was, well, if we didn't have the support of both towns, in particular West Greenwich has been very clear that they're not interested in doing the 2-year adjustment. So the thinking then is, what if we, instead of taking money out of unassigned fund balance and putting it in the budget as a revenue here, like we have sometimes done in the past, instead of putting it in the revenue line that affects both towns, we did an assignment from unassigned fund balance and made an adjustment just to Exeter, meaning we take money out of our unassigned fund balance, apply it just to Exeter, and the amount of money would be exactly calculated from the expected percentages that we should have seen if preschool and kindergarten enrollment were as it was expected pre-pandemic. And that would reduce the Exeter number from like 7% down to 5.38% just by making that adjustment. Now, again, we're not changing the percentages. I'm not changing the charter. I'm not doing anything. We're just making an adjustment from our unassigned fund balance for Exeter. And then in the following year, when we know that the population is going to shift back in the other direction, we do the calculations based on the actual population share, but make that adjustment back, 191,968. So we basically loan the money for a year, collect it back the following year. It's a zero net, but it brings Exeter from a 7% increase from where we stand right now to just over 5, which we remember is like the magic number that we started with. Even if we level fund and just look at the population shift, it would be at 5%. And then the following year, even with an increase, if we put that adjustment back in, Exeter would still only be looking at just shy of a 1% increase. So it's the same concept as what I was thinking about in terms of saying, hey, West Greenwich, pay a little bit this year, a little bit more, and then we'll credit it back next year to kind of level out the increase. Instead of using West Greenwich, we just look at our unassigned fund balance and do the exact same thing. Obviously, it's a totally different idea. I'm only presenting something because of the conditions of the world right now, pandemic. And we're trying to do the right thing for both of our towns during a time that's really quite challenging for a lot of the taxpayers and community members. And I'm not trying to do anything that benefits one town over the other. Over the course of 2 years, it zeroes out. There's no actual impact on anybody, but it just kind of levels out the impact in the two towns. So that's a thought. It's never been done before. I don't think that it is a violation of the charter because we're still operating on the exact population numbers that we calculate from the October 1st enrollment. We're simply making an adjustment based on the fact that we know the swing is going to go in the opposite direction the following year. I have not presented this to anybody. This is the first time I'm sharing it with the school committee. I'm looking for some feedback, some thoughts, and I will not even pursue it if it's not something that is of interest to the committee. But that's the idea, Diane, that I was talking about when I said I've come up with a different plan that takes West Greenwich completely out of the mix.
Jim, I think we would have to look at that.
Yeah, it would have a legal review. It would have, we would have to go through the town council. We would have to go through the school committee. But I just didn't want to take any more time pursuing the possibility without at least presenting it to the school committee and having a conversation first. And for no other reason, just for everybody to see that I'm trying to think really outside the box about how we might lower the impact, particularly on Exeter, given the population shift number and the reason for the population shift number.
Any questions, comments on that? Member Sadden's hands up. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. You were talking to me, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sure. So I know exactly what you're talking about, Jim. And I have concerns about it from a town of Exeter perspective. And my first thought is that I think it's not something I would be in favor of. One, I don't know if it's a large amount of money. I don't think it is. I think, what was the number you suggested? $200,000? You know, that's not something.
Yeah, just shy of.
I don't know what, I'm sorry, say that again.
It was just shy of 192,000 or so.
Yeah, see, yeah, $192,000 to Exeter in the grand scheme of things isn't a big help. That said, it may bring down the percentage closer to 4% or something, but from a total town tax base, $192,000, I don't even think it's worth the sweat or time to put into it. From my perspective, not to mention that I think there'd be a certain hesitation, not speaking for the council, but just since we've never done that before, we are going to set a precedent. And, you know, I understand you're saying, well, this is the first pandemic we've seen since 1918. But I think there'd be other reasons in the future that could certainly occur, that we're going into the reserve fund and we may not be so rich in the reserve fund in the future. So I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're doing. But again, that dollar amount to the town of Exeter, I mean, if I just think about it, and I don't want to think about it in terms of percentage, $192,000 is about, well, it's pretty small against the whole $10 million or $13 million you're looking for. So it just isn't enough to really bring my interest in wanting to do that, not to mention the fact that we lose the $192,000. So my feeling is I understand what you're doing. It doesn't fly in the face of the charter because that concerns me, because frankly and honestly, I'll remind all the members that we have to adhere to the law as elected officials, and that any time that we don't follow the law, that there's always an ethics problem. So I'm glad that it doesn't address any kind of an ethics violation that I can see. On the other hand, I don't think the dollar amount is so significant that it would interest me. And even if it was larger, I'd have some hesitation to do it. So for me, I don't think I'd really want to pursue it. But anyway, I thank you for your thoughts on this matter, Jim.
Thanks.
Member Donovan?
Thank you. You know, this whole situation that we all find ourselves in is so unprecedented. So I appreciate all the creativity and the thought that's gone into this and the analysis. But I have a lot of reservation about subsidizing either municipality's obligation to the school district. It's just the way the charter is written. I think that your predictions as far as post-COVID enrollment are probably spot on, but it is still speculation. And I'm very reluctant to get into, subsidizing even on a temporary basis, but there's got to be a solution. It's a real unique set of circumstances, and I hate to see either community saddled with such a percentage change from one year to the next. This is just untenable from year to year for the municipalities to have to make up this much of a differential when it's just a small difference in enrollment one way or the other. I think the argument can be made that the fund balance is comprised in large part with money from tax dollars. I know there's money there from other sources as well, but I think the argument could be made that that is taxpayer money. So, reallocating it to provide some relief along these lines is not an unrealistic ask. I just am very concerned about the precedent of it. I think you just can only predict so much. And I do appreciate the effort, but I'm not sure this is the way to go. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think any other hands are up. So Jim, I would kill that idea. Don't spend any more time on it.
Okay.
My hand did go up though, again, a second time.
I don't see you. I don't see you, Paul. Okay, go ahead though.
Anyway, if we're talking about other methods of creating revenue, there's the WB, or my abbreviation for it. You've got about $3 million in that fund, of which you've already, I think, targeted $500,000 for, correct, Jim?
Yeah, so that's, we're going to talk about that under the fund balance presentation, which is next on the agenda.
Fund balance, okay. In the context of the budget?
Yep.
All right. Then I'll hold my remarks for that. All right, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. That's where that $168,000 revenue that I had indicated for OPEB reserve is coming from. So that will, and again, that would require the school committee to say, yes, move forward with that. I'll explain it under the fund balance presentation, if you don't mind. So the only other things that I'd say then, I mean, I couldn't not present an idea that I had. If the school committee doesn't like it, we don't have to move forward, and that's your call, so fine. The only other things that I'll say then are we will see some other minor adjustments because we're still working, and this number will be a little bit lower the next time that we're together. I do anticipate that the tuition line number will be a little bit higher the next time that we're together. That will certainly impact the bottom line, but not by a lot. If we're not going to do any kind of an adjustment, then we will be looking more at the original document that I showed. this one. And so, let me just raise this again. So this is the one where we started at 10.79%. So we'll plug in the 33,808,284. Again, that number will go down a little bit. If we move forward with the OPEB reserve assignment, which we'll talk about under the next agenda item, there would be an additional revenue assigned here. The school committee still has the authority to decide if there's going to be some money from unassigned fund balance that gets applied as a revenue here that would be shared by the two towns. So West Greenwich and Exeter would go down. West Greenwich would go down to even further below zero. And then the tuition 202,903, that number will go up a little bit next time too. So that puts us at Exeter at 6.94%. And then that will go down a little bit based on additional reductions and additional revenue increases. And if the school committee decides to put money in here from unassigned fund balance that just gets applied, then these numbers will go down a little bit further. I don't see me being able to make any additional cuts unless we start cutting programs. And so I want to be prepared. The next meeting is the meeting where the school committee is scheduled to vote on the budget. And I want to be prepared for that meeting. And so if you want me to come to the table with a list of recommended cuts at that meeting, I'm happy to do that. I mean, I'm not happy to do it, but I will do it. Or if people think that, you know, you're at a place right now that's even less than what we approved last year in May, and you've done enough, then I won't spend time thinking about a list of cuts to bring to the table for the next meeting. But I want to hear what the committee is thinking, so I know that I know what I need to do to be fully prepared to engage in the next conversation about budget, which is a really important one. It's adoption night.
Yep. Jim, I have a question for the available funds from the surplus. We sometimes stick a number in there.
Yes.
So obviously we have to talk about it, but did you have an idea what you're thinking for that number, or you want to wait and see what everything else pans out?
I don't have an idea. I think anything would help. And I think when I show you the fund balance worksheet, which is the next part of the presentation, you'll have an idea of what kind of flexibility we have, and then the committee can talk. But I'd be happy to, you know, if you're thinking of a number that the committee is interested in, I'd be happy to plug that in so we can see what the impact would be as well.
That's exactly what I wanted to see. I just want to see leaving this meeting where we end up with the percentages for the two towns, just an estimate, if you will.
I mean, I can show you, like, let me just show you a couple of examples. So if the school committee said, listen, we're interested in putting $100,000 in as from unassigned fund balance as a revenue, which, you know, we've done, right? Last year we did 320,000 in the 11th hour. So if we did that, then that brings Exeter down to 6.55% and West Greenwich at negative 1.31%.
Okay.
If the school committee decided that they wanted to do 200,000, you can see, like, we can plug anything in that you want so you can see what the impact would be. You know, 200,000 might put us in the ballpark of getting Exeter below 6. But, you know, again, the population swing is really hard to manage because it's so significant.
Yep. I mean, I know for me, because that number that we're at is less than last year that we were asking. And really the 5.34 increase for Exeter was really due to the population shift. I mean, our overall budget with what you have in the chart right now, anyway, with that available from surplus is 1 point some percent. I mean, me personally, I'm not looking for you to bring recommendations for cuts. I think we did or you and your administrators did a great job with this budget. I mean, it's kind of miraculous if you ask me of how you got to the 33,808. So, I mean, again, I think the impact really is from the population shift. So that's where I stand anyway. I know I'm only one. So let me see, Member Monroe, go ahead.
So thinking back to that federal funding, the COVID money coming in that we're expecting 3 to 4 times as much, is that already accounted for in here, or is it possible to reallocate?
Yeah, it's a great question. The real issue that we have with that money is, like with all federal grants, you can't use it to supplant expenses that are already in the budget. It has to be used to supplement things that are in the budget, like to address learning loss needs. Might there be an opportunity for us to eliminate a position and create a new position that addresses a slightly different need? There's a possibility, but I don't think that we're going to have carte blanche flexibility to just take that money and plop it in here, because we need to prove that we're adding supports to address social, emotional, and academic needs. The one thing that I did do is take the psychologist out of the budget, and because we are assuming that we're going to apply that cost to that federal funding. And that's because that expense was paid for this year. It's a new position this year. It was paid for out of one of those stimulus grants. So we're just simply extending a federally funded program using additional federal funds. That's not a problem. The problem we have is taking things that have always been paid for out of operations dollars and then saying, now that you have access to this money that's supposed to be used to address a particular need, you can't just use it to replace funds that were paid for previously out of local. That's one of the big sins of federal grants.
Sure. I was thinking more about, there was curriculum for Linum that wasn't on last year or previous years, and then the literacy pilot.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering if maybe for next time, if you could do some research in that area of things that we do have new this year or expected for next year that would address some of these issues that could be allocated.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth asking the question. I'm not sure what the answer will be, but I think it's worth an ask. And since I sit on that committee, I have a way to ask the question pretty quickly.
Very convenient.
Yeah. So thanks. Okay. I'll ask the question for sure.
Member McFadden?
So Jim, when you say it's a little below what the ask was last year in the budget, are you talking about the budget that was defeated and not the actual budget that we ran with?
Yeah, so the we're at $53,000 below the budget that was defeated. That's the budget that was approved by the school committee in May, but it was defeated at the town level. So I'm $53,000 below that.
Yeah, I understand it, but I mean, when you say that, and you know, it did pass an Exeter, and there's no burden to West Greenwich this year, so I would submit that West Greenwich is not going to do the same thing, perhaps, as it did last year, which was to endorse a defeat of the budget. It is what it is. I understand what you're saying. I'm just, if you think about it, though, you're kind of like saying, well, let's go with last year's budget. It's smaller, even though it was defeated. You know, so we must keep that in mind.
No, I totally understand.
Excuse me. Am I not talking? Yeah. All I'm just suggesting is that there was a little bit of distaste for the last year's budget. It failed, right? And we have to be sensitive to that as well. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, I was actually just going to say, I totally understand what you're saying, but the picture that's on the screen doesn't just reference the comparison to the budget that was approved and defeated, it also references a comparison to what we're actually operating under. So that's the final budget that was approved by the school committee in August. And it also does a comparison to FY20. So I have actually presented 3 separate comparisons so that, you know, we have a full picture of what the number is compared to where it was in May, where it was in August, and where it was in FY20. All of those things are presented on the screen.
Member Allen?
Hi.
There you go. Jen.
Sorry, I had hit it twice and didn't mean to. What would Exeter look like if from the unassigned fund balance, we took $350,000?
So Exeter would go to 5.57% and West Greenwich would go to negative 2.22%.
Okay.
And again, we'll do whatever the committee wants to do. You know, whether it's 100, whether it's 300, whatever it is that you want to do. Just remember that whatever we put in here as a revenue from unassigned fund balance really creates a structural deficit, because that $350,000 may or may not be able to be funded again at that level next year based on what we have in unassigned fund balance. So that's also a risk, but certainly definitely worth a conversation.
Diane, you good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Member Green?
Jim, along the lines of Member Monroe's question about the federal funding, well, it
Yes.
was grant funding, but is there anything special related to the pandemic? For example, I remember discussing the SNAP benefits were given like a 15% pandemic break. You know, we have a unique situation where we have the regional district, we have the younger population on that line down in Exeter that chose to go to schools right across the street or so close. A lot of parents opted to homeschool for so many reasons. Some were because they didn't want their children to have to deal with the safety measures and, you know, 5, 6, 7-year-olds wearing masks on the bus for 45 minutes all day at school, you know, just for that piece. And I mean, I think it's easy to prove that. Is there anything, I don't know, I'm just thinking that it seems like they're so willy-nilly where they give, you know, pandemic money to. There's nothing for the towns, or has that been looked into at all for these special situations?
Right now, all of the stimulus money that has been approved and sent down to the states, none of it can be used to offset the cost to the local municipalities.
Mhm.
So, and I know that that's been discussed.
Okay.
The current bill that is being talked about at the federal level, the Democrats want there to be money in there to offset expenses for municipalities. The Republicans do not. That's a big bone of contention. I don't know where they will land, but it's a discussion that's occurring. But as of right now, based on everything that's been approved, there's nothing that we can do to offset the impact to the towns. And what the state is doing is they're looking at, you know, how do these things impact the funding formula, which is reduced enrollment because parents have sent children to private schools, reduced enrollment because of preschool and kindergarten numbers, reduced enrollment because of homeschool, and then the reduced free and reduced lunch applications. And they're just looking to hold us harmless. And I put that language in my status report as an attachment. That's the only thing that the state is doing to address our needs. But as I said last time, you know, it is helpful. It's super helpful for us. It's super helpful for most other districts. But we're a district where the largest percentage of our funds come from taxpayers. We're not a district where the state pays for everything or almost everything, where, so the state making their adjustment for us has a much lower impact than it would on a Providence or a Central Falls, where the education is paid for almost entirely by the state.
Right, but I just thought they might take it into account, given the significant decrease to the formula last year and the unique situation. It was just a thought.
The best they're doing is trying to hold us harmless,
Okay.
which again is helpful,
Mhm.
but it's not going to close our gap completely because, and we're so unique because we have the regional district with the population share determined based on the charter. And one town was impacted significantly more than the other. We're really the only district that's facing this. So they're
Right,
not,
so help us out.
I wish.
Okay. Member Green's all set. So Member Allen and Member McFadden, you both have your hands up, and I think they're still up from last time, but if you want to speak, go ahead. You're both good?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add other than I might have a question. Are we going to schedule a second combined school town council meeting?
Yeah, we can talk. Yeah, we can talk about that. And I did tell the towns we probably would have a second meeting. Jim and I talked about the date of March. I think it was March 2nd, right, Jim?
Yes.
Yep,
That's what's
March.
on the timeline that was distributed.
Yep, so March 2nd. So if the committee would like to do that, again, at our combined meeting, I did mention we probably most likely would have another meeting because the numbers were going to change significantly from where they were at that workshop. So March 2nd, if everybody's good with that, we'll get a letter out to the town councils. Okay. Member Monroe, sorry. Yep, go ahead.
So just for a clarifying question, not to be too much in the gray here, but let's say we did have to cut programs because of the budget constraints. If we then received the federal funding and wanted to add those programs back in, would that be a possibility that those specific programs that were cut would be reintroduced to, and because of the federal funding, be able to enhance the learning for students or help decrease the gap?
So it depends on what the rules are for the use of the federal funding. If the federal funding went to the towns and the town said, we're going to use this to fund the education request, then we could do that. But if the federal funding went to the town, something tells me they're not giving it to us.
Okay, what about that, the COVID grant funding that's coming directly to us?
So the COVID grant funding that comes directly to us, again, the rules of how that can be spent have not been determined yet. Mm-hmm. And I think let's say we cut a particular program, that program would need to satisfy the parameters of how the money could be spent in order for us to make a case that this program was cut and now we want to add it back to address learning loss, for example. So if we cut like a career and tech program, for example, that's not going to meet the requirements for addressing learning loss. But if we cut a reading teacher, then that we could make a case that would address learning loss through the grant. The problem is that if we cut the reading teacher and then we don't have the ability to use the funding, it doesn't make its way to us and we don't have the ability to bring that person back, then we actually lose reading instruction for kids. So it's a risk, but I understand what you're saying. Unfortunately, we won't have the answer to this until the end of March. That's the timeline. And the budget has to be passed in February. So we'd be taking a risk. Anything that we did would be a risk.
Mhm. Okay, thanks.
Member Green, did you have a question or comment?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Member Allen?
Hi, I had to unmute. I was just wondering if maybe we could just look at a few of the cuts. I don't really like the idea of cutting programming, but just in case we had to for the next meeting. And my other question was, if we're going to meet on March 2nd with the town council, we'll have already passed the budget. Shouldn't we meet with them before March 2nd then?
Jim and I talked about that too, so go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly could. We could schedule a meeting. What I was saying is that the timeline that was submitted to the two towns and that was shared pretty broadly had the second meeting, the joint meeting of the school committee with the town council scheduled for March 2nd. One thing, and the school committee is scheduled to adopt a budget on February 26th, whatever that date is, right?
Yep.
Right.
So you have a couple.
The 23rd.
23rd. So you could adopt a budget on the 23rd and then have the joint meeting. And then as a result of the joint meeting, we may have to make an adjustment. You know, you may have to change your vote, adopt a new budget. Another thing that you can do is table it on the 23rd. I mean, it's scheduled for adoption, but you table it, have the second meeting with the town council, and then move into a school committee meeting immediately following the town council meeting, where the budget would be adopted, as long as I have a budget number so that I can produce the language that goes on the ballot by that Friday, March 5th, we're good. So having the joint meeting on the 2nd, which is the day that it's been publicized, works for us. We would likely, though, have to end the joint meeting and then continue with a school committee meeting to really finalize the budget. That's an option that you have as well.
Okay.
Member Donovan?
Thank you. Just one last clarification. It's probably up there somewhere. Setting aside the local contribution percentages for a moment, going to the operations budget, percentages increase or decrease year over year. I think our ultimate change last year, the operations budget increased over the previous year 1.42%, maybe.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. So the budget that the school committee approved on May 26th of 2020 was a 1.42% over the prior year, 1.42% increase, just the operations budget.
Okay, so then the 33,808 that you are proposing at this point is how much of a decrease in operations budget?
Well, so let me, that again, it gets tricky because I want to make sure that I answer correctly for what I'm comparing it to. This is what the school committee approved in May. It's not what we're currently operating under. So this year, on August 11th, the school committee had to adopt a new budget after the 33,861 request was voted down, right?
Got it. Yes.
So that was a $251,000 reduction from the previous year. So let's see, that is equal to this over. Just give me 1 second. So it was a negative 0.75% change, right? So a 0.75% reduction from the prior year. So what we're currently operating on, 33,136,553, is 0.75% reduction over the prior year, FY20. Now for the FY22 budget, the 33,808, which is where I am right now, represents a 2.03% increase over our current budget, the one adopted in August. It's a negative 0.16% change to the budget that was requested for FY21. And it is a 1.26% increase over the FY20 budget. Because remember, FY20 was higher than last year's budget, than the current year budget.
Correct.
So, when you look at the percentages, it seems very reasonable no matter what you compare it to. The problem is the population shift changes everything.
Right.
So I don't know if that answered your question, but
It does. Thank you. And just one last thought that I would have, I want to make this suggestion on the record. I don't want this to be off. With regard to the school resource officer, I'm not sure that that's something that we can continue to afford, especially this year. And if there's, even a contemplation of a sharing of the cost with West Greenwich, I would like to see what those, what effect, if any, that would have on the overall impact if we either eliminated that cost or divided it with West Greenwich. Not for tonight, but if you're thinking about ideas to float for the next proposal.
okay.
It's an awful thing. I don't want to make that suggestion. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Diane, your hand is still up. I don't know if it was still up from last time.
Oh,
You're good? Okay. All right. So as far as Jim bringing cuts to us, I'm a no. We need a consensus. Diane's a yes. Terry Donovan wants to do something with the SRO if that's taken out and split with the towns. I guess that could be considered a cut. Andrea, how are you feeling about Jim bringing cuts?
I would like to see what it would look like if we eliminated some of those new programs that are on this year, so that literacy pilot and the Lynham curriculum, just to see if that could be covered and what impact that would have, if it would be worth exploring that at all.
Okay. All right. Member Green.
I also just had I can talk.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Andrea.
I just had a question about level funding. If, let's say, this doesn't pass and the towns then choose to level fund, would they be level funding per population? Would that be shifted, or would it be what they contributed last year? How would that work?
Interesting question.
We actually looked into that. I mean, it's our understanding that it would be based upon the money actually paid. I think that's, if I recall correctly, that's what we.
No, Michael. So the towns would level fund. It's what they gave last year, but in addition to that, the population shift, because that's what our charter says.
Correct.
The charter is part of the law. So if they're going to follow the law, you got to follow the charter.
Correct.
So
and there was a dispute, and I don't recall which town it was, but it was based upon, they said that they would level fund based upon the year, but then there was the issue was that they should be paying more because of the population shift. If I recall correctly, that was some time ago.
That's
correct.
That is correct. So we're going to have to talk about that at the next meeting, because I have to put it on the agenda as a discussion point, because that is not a resolved issue at this point, and we need to talk about it. And the reason that we need to talk about it is based on what Andrea's question was. Like, so for example, if I look at Exeter's contribution last year, can you still see my screen?
No, it's down.
No. So I'll just say it. Exeter contributed, I'm sorry, West Greenwich the current year contributed $14,369,939. That's their contribution this fiscal year, for the year that we're currently operating in. Based on the population shift and based on where we are right now with our budget, their contribution should go down $136,884 based on the population shift. So the question really is, if the budget were voted down and the towns level funded their contribution, Exeter would certainly say, we're going to contribute our contribution from last year, which was $12,334,997, even though you're asking for $13,190,943. They would be happy to say that. West Greenwich is not going to say, even though you only need $14,233,000 from us this year because of the population shift, we're going to pay $14,369,000. So $130,000 or $35,000 more, because they're going to want to take advantage of the population shift. Like those big swings have to come into play. And we need to come to an understanding that everybody shares about what happens if the budget goes down and there's a population swing, because it will matter a lot in years when there's a huge population swing. One town is not going to want to pay it, and the other town is going to be more than happy to pay their previous year's contribution. And in the meantime, we're not going to be collecting what we need. So it's a huge problem that we need resolution on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really the basis of the current issue that we have with the $34,000 swing. It's not, to me, it's really not about the $34,000. It's about the precedent that it set.
Well, it's about following our charter is what it is. You know, I mean, our charter is part of the law. And I know Member McFadden had said it earlier. I mean, you know, everybody's got to follow the law. So, you know, the charter is part of the law.
We're going to need to talk about it. We have an answer from Exeter. We're going to need legal to weigh in. It needs to go on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yep.
We very much need clarification on that, because if either community thinks that they can lock in the current year's local contribution by defeating the school budget at the all-day referendum, this will be a perpetual disaster.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
Correct. So great question.
Paul, your hand is up.
No, I agree. I think that it does need to be resolved. I don't necessarily agree with probably some of the comments that have been made today, because when you decide to put a kid shift involved, right, which nobody has thought of this, obviously, is that you're asking the town to pay an amount that was never approved by the voters. I mean, I know that sounds a little weird, but you always, when we advertise the budget, tell them what the town burden's going to be. But on defeat, if you don't advertise what you're going to ask them to pay on defeat, which you haven't been doing, right? It's confusing enough to read that all-day referendum thing. You're asking them to pay for something that the voters never approved. Aside from whatever one person may think or 10 people think what the charter says, me as a fundamentalist, when it comes to reading that charter, I just say the voters never got the opportunity to approve any amount that if there's a defeat in the all-day referendum budget request, the kids shift, which is always part of the all-day referendum budget question. Anyway, I'm sure this is going to come up, and Jim's putting it on the agenda. All right, thanks. I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay.
It requires an agenda and a lengthy conversation because we have to come to an agreement because of the potential implications going forward, as some of us just said. Yep.
Well, the charter is an agreement between the two towns. I really think to me, it's a legal opinion.
Yep.
I mean, we can discuss it at school committee, but I mean, the charter isn't just school committee.
Right.
The charter is the town of Exeter and town of West Greenwich. So I think we need a legal opinion, and then we can go from there.
Yep.
I'll bring it to Andrew's attention as well tomorrow. We can certainly start thinking about it and talking. I know that we have, and that again, it was an issue at the beginning of this year. So I'll definitely give him a heads up that it's urgent.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Jim, I didn't ask 3 members, but it looks like some, I don't know that I want to call them recommendations, but some ideas for cuts, if you want to bring that to the next meeting.
Yep. Will do.
Okay, I think we've exhausted that conversation. So let's jump to the fund balance presentation, updates, actions.
Okay. So this is the same presentation that I did at the last meeting, and you can see, you know, the unofficial fund balance, which is reported on Bob's report for that he's already presented, what we're required to keep in minimum fund, the projected operating balance at the end of this year. I have to update it. I think it's at 18,000 now. What we took out for the current year budget from unassigned fund balance. And then at the last school committee meeting on January 26th, there was the vote to capital projects housing aid for the $300,000 to move forward with the stage 3 submittal, and then the $45,000 for the truck and the scrubber. And then we captured $16,520 back that was not spent from the energy services consultant. We reversed the vote of February 26th of 19. And so we are now sitting at, with everything that we've done, including the assignment of the $345,000 or the commitment and assignment of the $345,000 from the last meeting, we are looking at a projected available fund balance at the end of this school year, fiscal year, of $449,407. Now, is that a solid number? No, because we need to wait for the official audit report to verify that that number is accurate, and the projected ending operating balance will change on a month-to-month basis. So we'll continue to track that. And we need to see where we land at the end of this fiscal year in order to make an actual projection. But we're sitting on a good amount of money that is available for us to use above and beyond what we're required to maintain because of the 2% rule based on our policy. Okay, so that's just a reminder of the conversation that we had at the last meeting. So now what I wanted to focus on here is okay, so this just shows that we've dropped $300,000 into the capital projects housing aid fund, and that was, the assignment or the commitment of the money from the school committee at the last meeting, and that gives us a balance that we can use to do the work that needs to be done for stage 3. What we're looking at here, way down at the bottom, is the OPEB trust. So as a reminder, and I know I put the original vote back, I put that in your school committee packet, but back on January 27th of 2016, the school committee voted to commit $275,000 from unassigned fund balance to what we called an OPEB trust. And that money has sat there it's kind of been like a set aside. It's been committed by the school committee, but we never actually set up the trust because the trust is a very legal, there are a lot of legal implications, and it doesn't allow us to have flexible access to those monies. So consistent with the conversation that I've been having around OPEB costs, this is not new, but this is connected to the budget. What we are looking for is, and we do have an opinion from the auditor that this is okay to do, by policy, we can reverse the commitment of the school committee that was made on the 16th and just uncommit that money to the trust, and it would go back into the unassigned fund balance. And then what we want to do is commit it to what we're calling an OPEB reserve. So it's not a trust, it's just a reserve, it's a set aside. And that gives us flexible access to use the money when we need it and we can use it as a revenue source to pay for post-employment benefit costs that are included in the operating budget, which, as I've reported, those post-employment costs are just included as an operating budget request line on a year after year basis. If we have a set aside, a reserve that we can access and include as a revenue on our budget, then we can assign some of that money to offset the expenses in any given year. That's where that $168,000 is coming from, because I looked at the total expenses of post-employment benefits, and we did like a 60%, 40% split, 60% paid out of the reserve, 40% stays in the budget. That would allow us to maintain a balance in the reserve so that we could use it in subsequent years. And it would allow us to provide an added revenue that would reduce the impact to the two towns. So that was the thinking. But if we're not going to use the trust, so we want to undo the trust, assign it to a reserve account specifically for post-employment benefits. And then because of the balance that we have in the WB, we feel safe withdrawing $500,000, but also assigning that or committing that to the OPEB reserve so that our starting balance becomes $775,000, the $275 that's already there in the trust, that we reverse and then put it in the reserve, $500,000 from the WB that gets committed to the reserve. That gives us a revenue source. And then in the budget for the next year, we could assign the number that I've been using, which is 60% of the cost of budgeted post-employment costs, $164,948 as an additional revenue. And if the school committee is in favor of that strategy, which I did hear some positive things about at some of the previous presentations, then when you adopt the budget with that revenue line included, then that's your vote. And that would leave us with just over $600,000 that we could use in subsequent years if we wanted to do the same thing and offset the impact on the taxpayers. If we do all of it in 1 year, which is problematic, because if we do everything in 1 year, we create a massive structural deficit that then just pushes the can down the road and creates a huge problem for us next year. And that's what I thought, based on previous conversations, we were trying to avoid. So that's my thinking. And that's why you have a series of votes included in your packet, which would achieve these goals.
Member McFadden, go ahead.
Hey, Jim, on the WB withdrawal, $500,000, I'm confused. So if I recall, and it's probably incorrectly, and you're going to correct me, is that I thought part of that WB withdrawal of $500,000, $300,000 of it was going towards engineering or something, phase 3 for the. So I'm thoroughly confused on the whole $500,000 thing withdrawal from the WB. Hello?
I just wanted to make sure that you were finished. The $300,000 came out of the unassigned fund balance. I had nothing to do with the WB.
All right. So the $500,000 withdrawal from the WB, you want to put that towards this reserve fund thing?
The OPEB reserve, so that you're taking money out of a healthcare account and putting it in a reserve account specifically for healthcare costs.
I understand philosophically you're taking money of almost the same color and putting it in a different account. Does that give us, it sounds like it doesn't give us any, you're saying it gives us flexibility, because frankly and honestly, as it appears to me at this point, the WB with status of those funds gives us a little bit more flexibility as far as withdrawal from that, as far as how we can use it. But you're, suggesting taking a $500,000 withdrawal from the WB and applying it into this reserve fund in eliminating the trust. For what benefit again?
So we have money that is set aside for the ongoing cost of post-employment benefits.
Sure.
And it's healthcare money that's being used for healthcare purposes. And in some of our previous conversations with school committee members were in favor of us making the funds from one account match their use. In other words, taking money out of the WB in the past and using it for things that are not related to healthcare was an issue that we discussed ad nauseum in past school committee meetings. So I was trying.
I don't remember those nauseating conversations. Was that prior to my previous term?
I don't recall.
Neither do I, because I don't recall those conversations, but continue.
I said,
hello?
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. So I guess for me, I thought we've used the WB for other purposes other than healthcare related issues. Is that not true?
In the past, we have.
Okay. So now you're suggesting, now we're at around, now I did look at today's WB balance, and it was just short of $3 million. I also noticed that if you look at it historically from the previous year, there's usually a little uptick, but we have not thought about yet, unless I'm mistaken, applying some of the WB to our dilemma for this year's budget? Question mark?
So,
Jim?
Yes, we
That's
have.
the question.
Yep, we have, because the money that I included as an additional revenue from the
Yeah, I remember. Was it 168,000 or something?
Yep, is money that
Okay.
comes from the WB and used as a revenue to offset the expenses for next year's budget. Yes, that's
So is that part of the 500,000, or is the 168 on top of the 500,000? I think I asked that last time, and you said it's part of the 500,000.
So I just want to make sure that I'm answering clearly. There is a $275,000 line that currently exists outside of the 500,000. The 500,000 that I'm talking about as a withdrawal adds to the 275 that currently exists and makes it 775. The $168,000 revenue line comes out of that 775. So the answer is yes, but.
So that's a pretty big chunk of change that we're reserving in a year where we have unique budgetary demands, that we could be using some of that money to help us overcome our budget crisis, because we are living in a pandemic. We do have an economic problem, state, federally, any way you want to look at it. And so I don't know if the timing's quite there to do what you want to do, when perhaps that money might be better used in offsetting our budget problem. Yes or no? Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
It's not a yes or no question. My job is to make recommendations, which I've made. The school committee can discuss and vote to do whatever you would like to do, and I'll just follow what you want me to do. I've made my recommendation.
Okay. So I think that's another discussion that I think we want to have before we make commitments of large sum of monies out of the WB. The fact that maybe it's a good idea, but the timing may not be there for that type of move, when we could be better using those monies in our 1 year budgetary crisis that's been brought upon by coronavirus, right? Which caused us to have the kid shift, which caused Exeter to have this 6.x% increase to their share in the school budget. So I'm saying I don't think there's anything bad about the suggestion. It's just that the timing may not be there, and it's something that maybe we might want to readdress next year. And maybe this year we could devote more of the WB, withdrawal towards the budget gap.
So I understand what you're saying. The two comments that I would make are, first, if we do a massive one-time infusion of money for addressing the budget shortfall, we've created a huge structural deficit that we will need to address in the following year. We've gone down that path before, and it took a long time for us to get out of that. So that is something that we're trying to avoid. But again, you guys are the school committee, and you can have a discussion and vote however you want to vote, and I'll just follow suit. But I'm just telling you my concerns.
Right. There's structural deficit, right? And then there's the danger or the problem of the kid shift brought upon by coronavirus, which we already recognize that next year right? There's going to be a shift back of some degree back into West Greenwich, which may be, shall we say, it may have a negative effect in West Greenwich, but it may not be so much that it brings them into the 4% category that we're in, and that's another fiscal year. And I don't know if I want to talk about next fiscal year as much as I want to talk about our challenge this fiscal year, right? And the fact that Exeter is faced with the hypothetical increase above 4%. And I think that at $3 million, which is currently what the WB funding level is, we should consider taking out some of that money, which would be dealt out to both Exeter and West Greenwich per the apportionment, right? I know exactly what you're saying, Jim, that, you're trying to plug a hole here, but you're also going to come back with program cuts. So I want the school committee in the next meeting to have as many options as possible before it, because maybe it doesn't want to cut programs. Maybe it wants to go to that WB and bring it down a little bit more palatable on the Exeter side, because if you don't, who can predict the consequences of the all-day referendum given the current economic circumstances? So I just want us to have all options available to us when you come back to us next school committee meeting, where you're going to have program cuts that the school committee may not be so fond of. And they may say, you know what, I'm willing to address the unique economic conditions we have with the WB infusion as opposed to putting it into this reserve fund. That's it's about. So I think that if we delay this motions that are in there today, at least until the next meeting, I don't think we're harmed by it. We're not harmed by it. And we can continue to address, what these program cuts are going to look like in the context of bringing that Exeter final number down lower. Does that make sense? I just want as many options available to the school committee, and I don't want us to get, restricted in any way. I want us to be able to address the WB, the withdrawal, the money that we take out of there, and maybe we don't want to put all of it in there. So I guess what I'm asking for is that we don't put a motion to withdraw from the WB until the next meeting, where the budget, because what I'm suggesting is that some of that WB money would be used to address our budget concerns for this year. Right? Does that make sense? Does everybody understand what I'm saying or not? There may be people that don't even know what the WB is, but that's what I'm suggesting, that we put it off till the next school committee meeting.
Member Allen?
Member Allen, you're still muted.
Hi. Actually, the WB, we can still move forward with the first two motions here to take the $275,000 out of the trust and to put it into a reserve account for OPEB. Did you hear me? Anyone?
Yep.
I heard you.
Oh, okay. Because that doesn't affect the WB, really.
It doesn't?
No.
No,
The
we're
first
just
two
moving
motions do
203. Don't
Yeah,
affect the WB. The
well-
third one does.
The first two motions don't. So we had a thorough discussion on this topic at the budget workshop. I believe that's where we had this thorough discussion. So there were 3 members that weren't at that budget workshop, and I believe that's where the discussion is happening tonight. Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? So because we had a discussion at the budget workshop that thoroughly covered all of this, I'm fine with taking the third vote. I mean, if it passes, it passes. It doesn't, it doesn't. Member Donovan, what are your thoughts on that third motion?
I'm ready to vote on that motion. I was the member from Exeter that was present at that work session, and I feel informed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jim, are you all set? And we're going to go ahead and take our votes?
Yes.
Okay. So I reworded the first vote a little bit before the meeting, and Jim and I had talked about it. So if we can have a motion to uncommit $275,000 to the OPEB, which was in the OPEB trust fund, and commit the $275,000 funds to the district's unassigned fund balance. So we're going to uncommit and that out of the trust and then commit to the unassigned fund balance. So if we can have a motion for that.
Donovan, so moved.
Do we
I'll
have a
second it.
Okay, member Pistol seconded. I'll take a roll call vote. Member Donovan,
Donovan, aye.
member Green,
Aye.
member Allen,
You're muted.
Diane. I need you to unmute yourself. Okay, I'll go back to member Allen. Member McFadden,
Abstention.
member Pasillo,
Aye.
member Monroe.
Aye.
Okay, I'm an aye. Member Allen, Diane, can you oh, I don't see a speaker in front of Diane's. Member Allen, can you unmute yourself?
Or 6.
Star 6. I don't know how to get a vote on member Allen. So motion carries.
Motion would carry, right?
Okay. The second motion is to commit $275,000 from the unassigned fund balance to a district OPEB other post-employment benefits reserve fund. Can I have a motion?
Donovan, so moved.
Donovan moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Green seconds. Okay. Roll call vote. Member Donovan,
Donovan, aye.
member Green,
Aye.
member Allen. Okay, yes, Diane's still having a problem. Member McFadden,
Abstention.
member Pasillo,
Aye.
member Monroe,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, motion carries. Okay. And then if I can have a motion to authorize a withdrawal of $500,000 from the WB Health Reserve and commit those funds to the district OPEB other post-employment benefits reserve fund. If I can have a
Donovan, so
motion.
moved.
Donovan moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Green seconded. Paul, your hand is up. I don't know if it was up or it's,
Yeah. I wanted to mention again, this is the one that I wanted to retire to the next meeting till we got a better idea what our budget was, so we could commit maybe a smaller amount of money from the WB such that it could be used to offset our budget problems. Thank you.
okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. Member Donovan,
Donovan, I.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen. No, I don't have Diane, so. Member McFadden,
I don't like your vote, Ms. Donovan, and I vote no.
everybody has the right to vote how they want to. Member McFadden. Member Pasillo,
Nay.
Member Monroe.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. So it's a 4-2 vote. We don't have Member Allen available, so motion carries. Okay. Jim, thank you for those extensive presentations and for your recommendations. We'll move on to the 2021 reentry planning updates.
So really the updates that I wanted to talk about were the things that I included in my status report around the testing, which we already talked about. And then I just wanted to remind people that this week on Monday, we brought back all 7th grade students to full-time in-person learning, and lots of happy parents. The plan is the week after vacation, we're moving to full in-person, all 8th grade students as well. So we are moving forward based on the results of our testing, which continue to show really positive results for us. And it's a plus for the community.
Okay, any questions, comments on the reentry planning updates? Member McFadden, would you like to say something? Okay. Everybody's good? Okay, capital project update bond discussion.
Okay, so coming out of the building committee meeting last Thursday, the 4th, we had discussed one of the agenda items was the owner's project manager, and the other was the commissioning agent. I had issued an RFP, received responses. Based on the responses, there were clearly 2 candidates that were worth looking at with follow-up interviews, but we easily could have made a recommendation that night also. The building committee, through consensus, directed the district admin team to conduct the interviews with the 2 candidates that we felt were offered us the best value, offered the district the best value. We conducted those interviews yesterday morning and yesterday afternoon. We had a series of questions, a rubric for scoring, and the superintendent, district treasurer, director of technology, director of facilities participated. Each interview lasted about an hour. The rubric that the district uses, we have it's a 1 to 4 rating scale, and the 4 being the best and 1 being the least. And 4 is it's a really unique thing, but it's really powerful. It's called the wow factor. It's something that during the interview process, the candidate, for whatever position you're looking for, says something that is just like, wow. The candidate that we're recommending is Downs. In between the admin interview team, Downs received 8 wows, and the other candidate received no wows. So it just tells you that it was really quite a difference that you wouldn't have seen unless we had those interviews. On paper, they look very similar, but once we got into the nits and grits of the interview, it worked out. So we're going to recommend, going forward with Downs. The cost is well under budget. They came in at $77,400. We were anticipating, easily, approaching 200,000 plus on this. So we're in very good shape. I think it's a tribute to where we are in the process. We are at stage 3. So the recommendation is OPM services will be Downs, well within budget. And then we'll continue using commissioning agent Stephen Turner Incorporated, who during the course of the interview process has worked with Downs on other projects. And so we feel like we have a really strong team going into this. So that's where we stand as far as everything that is in our control, the school committee, the building committee, the district admin team. We are all on the same page. We are moving forward. We are within budget. And there is actually a site visit tomorrow with the architects, the engineers, the structural engineers, and a representative from Downs will be there as soon as I make the phone call. We've kind of got, waiting on the outcome of tonight's meeting. So that's all very, very positive. I think the school committee should feel really good about that. I don't know, Jim, you were there. I don't know if you want to add anything to the.
I think you covered it.
Okay, all right. So the things that are out of our control. So I received tonight, we received from, was it Andy Andre? He's the liaison who gives us all the status of the bills. So he provided a bill report to us tonight. And during this meeting, I jumped on, on the legislative website to see what I can find out and try and discern this. So it looks like on the Senate side, they have on 2/4, which was last Thursday, they were meeting, they recommended that the act be immediately considered. Then on 2/4/21, that same committee on the Senate side, this is Senate Bill 113. The committee recommended passage 7-0. So that's on the Senate side. So that happened on 2/4. On the let me go back. On the House side, it looks like on 2/4 on the House side, they recommended the measure be held for further study on 2/4. So let me just make sure I'm in the right zone here. Hold on. Yep. So schedule for committee recommended passage placed on House calendar 2/9. So it looks like we're waiting on the House side, and it looks like they are going to have a vote hopefully by the 12th. Now, what does that mean? According to our bond counsel, if it goes through the House and through the Senate, and they both recommend passage, it is enacted. Then in order for it to be effective, it either needs action by the governor, which typically does not happen, or 6 days, not including Sunday, elapse. So it just sits, lays fallow for 6 days. On the 7th day, doesn't count, it's Sunday, and on Monday, it becomes effective. But since they're looking at this and it's not clear in what I'm reading, although it does say schedule for hearing and or consideration, but what we were looking for, what we were hoping for was immediate consideration which would have sped up the time to become effective. So I'm going to have to follow up. I did not hear from any of the reps or the senators that I reached out to today in preparation for this meeting. Clear as mud.
I do have some assurances. I mean, they're not in writing, but I do have some assurances from the legislative committee that I sit on through RISA, because we made this one of our legislative priorities to make sure that enabling legislation gets moved through both House and Senate side very quickly, because we lost time as a result of a late start, and that we're now up against timelines for getting things on ballots locally. And we have commitment from both the House and the Senate that they are moving on that. And today, during our, I think Marie was on the meeting with me and it was stated out loud, right? There are 2 communities right now that ours in Westerly, I think it is. Westerly, that they're being moved through. Like, we've gotten some verbal assurances that they're being moved through very quickly. So I do anticipate that we will have action by the 12th, which will allow us to meet the timeline to get it on the ballot for April. That could change, but I have pretty good assurances that we're on track.
Right. I'll recap in 2 sentences. So on the House side, on the Senate side, they voted 7-0 for passage on 2-4. On the House side, they placed it on the House calendar for today. So they're probably meeting, or they're finishing meeting today, and we should have, hopefully they pass 7-0 tomorrow. So we would be sitting there tomorrow morning when we wake up with 7-0 pass, 7-0 pass in both houses, move it forward. And if they can get immediate approval, then it's effective. And now we hit all our timelines. And I know that Jim has been working with the Board of Canvassers and making them aware.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're doing everything we can. It's just close. We're close.
Bob, what's the House bill number, please?
So House, it's really, it's really interesting. So there's a House Bill 5024, which was Justine Caldwell is the sponsor. So House Bill 5024. The Senate bill is SB 113 by Senator Morgan.
Thank you.
Okay. The interesting part is there's House Bill 5102, which was sponsored by Justin Price. In that one, it looks like they picked up the 5024. In you know what I mean? They probably had dueling bills and just they're moving on 5024.
You all set, Bob?
I think the one of the things that we want to kind of consider as we go forward is we came out of the building committee meeting, we had clear direction about how the administrative team should respond to the RFP for the OPMs. And then, between last Thursday and tonight, it wasn't a big leap, and it kind of, it's informing the school committee, but it's just which one is going to be the governing body, because there may be an opportunity, there may be a time where we're weeks apart, and it's like, we've got to go take action based on what the building committee says and report out to the school committee. And I just feel like I'm in a gray area of, are we taking our orders from the building committee or the school committee?
Good question. The building committee should be making recommendations to the school committee. But I think on this big project, there's certain things that the building committee can make decisions on. So I guess we need to figure out where that line is drawn.
You might want to, I would recommend maybe folding that into the charter review by legal.
Yeah. if I'm
Because
not
it's all in
mistaken,
the charter. If you look at the charter, it has some pretty explicit
Powers.
authority of the building committee, and we want to make sure everybody's in the know and expectations are being met. That's really what it's from my
Yeah.
perspective.
And that originally that was from when the high school was built, correct? That's where all those
Yeah.
those
it just-
specific. So this is a big, I guess it's a big bond. It's a big project. So I guess, yeah, I'm thinking let's look at that and see what it looks like, but we might need to regroup a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You know, we did take some time to look at the language today. I'm just going to throw this out there, but we don't have to have the discussion. We certainly can have legal look at it. My interpretation is, according to what's written, that the school committee authorizes the money. And then once the money is authorized, the building committee is overseeing the projects within the authorized money, just to make sure that we can continue to move pretty efficiently. And given in particular for this project, where 2 days of downtime could be 2 days of kids not going to school when there's heat in the building, like we need to make sure that we're doing everything as efficiently as possible and make sure there is no downtime so we meet the target and get heat in that building before winter.
Yeah. I mean, the building committee could act like the project manager, if you will.
Yep.
The bond, we already approved everything that's in the bond, right? All the improvements. So it's more of, I think, a project manager role at this point for the building committee. So yeah, let's take a look at that with legal. Okay. Bob, you good?
All set. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. And I just want to remind everybody to make their way over to admin to sign the statewide bond pay-as-you-go memorandum. It's been a long meeting, so just a reminder. And then if you want to email Bob to let him know if you're going to come, if you can only come in an off time, if you will. And they'll have that at the front desk. Okay. Important dates and meetings. So we have Tuesday, February 23rd, school committee meeting, budget adoption, but that may vary depending on what happens at that meeting. Tuesday, March 2nd, budget workshop. It says optional, but we're going to go ahead and have that with the towns. So put that in your calendars. Tuesday, March 9th, school committee meeting. Monday, March 22nd, public hearing at 7 o'clock. Tuesday, March 23rd, school committee meeting. Monday, April 12th is the all-day referendum and the school committee meeting in the evening for the results. April 13th, school committee meeting, and April 27th, school committee meeting. So we've gone from a snowstorm to hopefully some nice sunny weather. All in one, important dates and meetings. Okay, before we adjourn, Jim, you have anything else?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay, so if we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Green moves. Do we have a second?
Second.
Still a second. I will take a roll call vote. Member Donovan,
Donovan, I.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen. Oh, Diane, I know we can't get. Member McFadden,
Aye.
Member Pasillo,
Aye.
Member Monroe.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.